In the heart of the Palestinian territories, a disturbing incident has unfolded that has left both local and international communities reeling. On November 27, 2025, in Jenin, a city in the northern West Bank, a confrontation between Israeli soldiers and Palestinians ended in the deaths of two men under controversial circumstances. Eyewitness reports and video footage suggest that these individuals, who appeared to be surrendering, were shot by Israeli forces in what the Palestinian Authority has called a summary execution. The images from this incident are haunting. The footage, captured by AFP, shows two Palestinian men standing with their hands raised, seemingly signalling surrender in a final attempt to defuse an escalating situation. However, the peaceful gesture was met not with compassion, but with aggression. Israeli soldiers are seen pushing the two men into a nearby building. Moments later, gunshots are heard off camera, and the two men are seen falling to the ground. As the chaos unfolded, troops moved in and handled the bodies, which were later confirmed to be those of the Palestinians who had been shot. This incident has sparked outrage, with accusations of unlawful killing and a blatant disregard for human rights. The Palestinian Authority wasted no time in condemning the killings, labelling them as a summary execution. This strong reaction comes as part of a broader pattern of violence and tension in the West Bank, a region that has seen frequent clashes between Israeli forces and Palestinian residents. But what makes this case particularly alarming is the perception of the men's attempt to surrender and the subsequent treatment they received. The international community, including the United Nations, is now calling for a full and impartial investigation into the actions of the Israeli military during this incident. The Israeli military's response to the situation has been met with widespread scrutiny. While Israeli authorities have not yet provided a comprehensive statement, the situation continues to escalate as more details emerge. The incident has raised serious questions about the rules of engagement for Israeli soldiers operating in the occupied territories, especially when it involves situations where the opposition appears to be attempting to surrender. In Jenin, a city known for its contentious history, tensions have been high for decades. The West Bank, and in particular areas like Jenin, have long been focal points for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The military operations that take place here often result in civilian casualties, and the residents of the region have become accustomed to the presence of Israeli soldiers and the constant threat of violence. But this latest incident, where Palestinian civilians seem to have been targeted despite showing signs of surrender, has raised concerns that the situation is becoming even more volatile. The United Nations has been quick to respond, urging for an independent investigation into the killings. The UN has called on Israel to be held accountable for the actions of its forces, demanding transparency and adherence to international law. Human rights organisations have echoed these calls, citing this event as a stark example of what they describe as Israel's disproportionate use of force in the region. These organisations argue that the circumstances surrounding the deaths of the two Palestinians raise serious doubts about the conduct of the Israeli forces and whether they followed proper procedures in dealing with the situation. The incident comes at a time of heightened tension in the region, with ongoing protests and demonstrations across the West Bank in response to Israeli military actions. The Palestinian territories are increasingly under pressure as Israeli policies toward the region remain harsh and uncompromising. In recent months, Israel has ramped up its security measures, and military operations in cities like Jenin have become more frequent. Each operation brings with it a new round of violence, and civilian casualties have become a regular occurrence. The role of international organisations in this conflict is critical, yet the situation remains delicate. While many nations and international bodies have condemned the violence, concrete actions against Israel are few and far between. The United States, a key ally of Israel, has often been hesitant to criticise its ally too strongly, while European nations have issued statements calling for calm but have yet to take substantial action. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Authority continues to press for international recognition and support for their cause, calling for an end to the occupation and an acknowledgement of Palestinian sovereignty. Jenin has been a flashpoint in the conflict for years, and the latest killings are likely to further fuel the already intense anger and frustration that residents feel. The city is home to many Palestinian refugees who were displaced during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, and its residents have been subjected to decades of military operations, checkpoints, and restrictions on movement. These ongoing hardships have made Jenin a symbol of Palestinian resistance, but they have also made it a place of intense suffering. In this environment, any act of violence, particularly one as egregious as the shooting of men who appeared to be surrendering, only deepens the divide between Israelis and Palestinians. For the international community, the question now is whether this tragic event will serve as a catalyst for change, or if it will be another chapter in a long history of violence that goes unresolved. The call for an investigation by the United Nations and human rights groups could lead to greater scrutiny of Israel's military actions, but whether this scrutiny will result in meaningful change remains to be seen. The aftermath of this incident is already having far-reaching implications. The Palestinian Authority has called for protests, and social media platforms are abuzz with outrage over the deaths. Demonstrations have spread to various cities in the West Bank, and there are fears that these protests could escalate into a larger wave of violence. As emotions run high, the situation is becoming more fraught, and the need for accountability and justice has never been more urgent. Meanwhile, in Israel, there are growing concerns about how this incident will affect the broader conflict. Public opinion in Israel has been polarized over the years, with some viewing the military's actions as justified and others calling for a re-evaluation of Israeli policies toward the Palestinians. The Israeli government is under increasing pressure, not only from international critics, but also from its own citizens, who are questioning the moral and ethical implications of the country's military operations in Palestinian territories. The current state of affairs in the West Bank is unsustainable. The cycle of violence and retaliation continues to fuel bitterness and mistrust between Israelis and Palestinians. The situation requires a comprehensive and honest dialogue, one that addresses the root causes of the conflict, including the status of Jerusalem, the rights of Palestinian refugees, and the future of settlements in the West Bank. Until these issues are resolved, incidents like the shooting in Jenin will remain an unfortunate but predictable part of the broader geopolitical struggle in the region. As we await further details and investigations into this latest incident, the world watches closely. The tragedy that unfolded in Jenin is not an isolated case, but part of a broader pattern of violence that continues to define the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In the end, it is clear that without significant efforts towards peace and justice, the cycle of violence will only continue to claim more innocent lives. In conclusion, the tragic events in Jenin serve as a stark reminder of the ongoing human cost of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where moments of surrender and calls for peace are often met with violence. As the international community demands accountability and an investigation into the killings, the need for a long-term, just solution becomes ever more urgent. Until meaningful dialogue and reconciliation take place, the cycle of bloodshed, grief, and distrust will likely persist, further entrenching divisions and delaying any prospect of lasting peace in the region.